You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Mom who voted for Trump moved to tears over economic struggles, based on an article by Sarah K. Harris. The affordability scam was always the point. Bait, not policy. The source article gives away the game in its own details. Trump campaigned on groceries, gas, and lower costs, then turned around and claimed affordability was a word the press invented. That is not confusion. It is evasion. He ran on a material promise, then tried to erase the promise once people started measuring him against it. The report centers a mother at her gas station, crying because the costs are crushing her and her children. That is the real political fact here. Economic pain is not abstract, and it is not evenly distributed. It lands inside households, in the form of impossible choices, when the people with power keep talking like the problem is semantic. Who has power? Trump has power. Not the mom at the pump. Not the voters trying to keep their lives together. The president does not get to campaign on cheaper groceries and then pretend he was never speaking the language of affordability. He made the decision to sell comfort and deliver alibis. The article also shows the machinery of excuse-making around him. He talks about a golden age, claims American exports are on fire, and insists he gets no credit. That is a standard authoritarian move in miniature. Declare victory, deny responsibility, and force everyone else to argue with your script instead of your record. Misdirection as strategy. The strongest part of the source is the contrast between the woman's plain description of strain and Trump's theatrical denial that the underlying issue even exists as a political category. He says the word affordability was devised by the press. That is not merely false, it is an attempt to discredit the very terms ordinary people use to name what is happening to them. This is how misdirection works in power politics. The public is told to doubt its own language before it is allowed to judge the administration's performance. The trick is old. If you can make people argue over words, you can avoid accountability for outcomes. The reporting's limit. The article's framing is thinner than the politics deserves. It treats Trump's behavior as if he were merely acting like he did not make the promise, when the more accurate reading is that he is actively recasting a broken bargain after the fact. That is not a communication problem. It is a governing method. The strategist quoted in the piece says voters feel hoodwinked. That is accurate, but still too soft. Hoodwinked implies a con. This is closer to a wholesale political fraud, built on the assumption that voters will tolerate being lied to if the lie is delivered loudly enough and repeated often enough. The pattern beneath the story. The deeper pattern is not just economic disappointment. It is the familiar authoritarian bargain, promise relief, take credit for imaginary prosperity, and when the bill arrives, tell people the language they used to trust was always made up by hostile elites. That lets the powerful keep control while ordinary people absorb the damage. This is also why democratic politics cannot indulge Trump's fantasy that he is a misunderstood fixer. He is the source of the promise, the owner of the failure, and the beneficiary of the confusion. The mother in the story is living the consequence. Trump is performing the Darge. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article. With the automated voice of Rizat, thanks for listening.